The fact is, though, that there's people out there who are like, oh, the Russians are only advancing a kilometer. They're very slow pace. When the war first started, the gray zone that separated the militaries was defined by the maximum range of the weaponry available. So if it's an infantry-based war, you're basically the zone separating you is the maximum effective range of your machine guns or your rifles. You bring in your armor. Now you extend that. So you're talking about a gray zone of 1 to 2 kilometers separating zone. So if I were to attack you, I've got to cross my line of departure and advance through a gray zone, 1 or 2 kilometers, where I'm going to come under fire from your. In World War I, you've seen the World War I movies where the guys go over the trench line. They have to go through a gray zone to get to the other trench. That's the gray zone. And while you're doing that, you get hit with artillery, machine gun fire, etc. Today with drones, the gray zone is 60 kilometers wide sometimes. 60. So in order to advance in, you've got to go through 60 kilometers of hell. Drone strikes, artillery strikes guided by drones observing. So when we say the Russians are advancing a kilometer a day, they're advancing 62 kilometers a day because they have to go through the gray zone, fight through the gray zone, close with the Ukrainian positions, and then continue their advance. People have no clue what they're talking about whatsoever about the reality of this war, how hard it is. It's extraordinarily hard, but how good the Russians are. And I don't mean good just in terms of their military proficiency, but as the Russians advance, they're coming upon village after village after village of places that were populated by civilians, Russian speakers who consider themselves to be Russian, who don't want to leave. The Ukrainians mock them. They call them zhdun, the waiters. And mainly these are old people or kids, and they hide in basements. And the Ukrainians mock them and laugh at them. And when they come out for water, the Ukrainians kill them. They let them starve to death there. The Russian soldiers come in and rescue these people. They come in and they realize you can't evacuate them initially, so they secure the position. Then they bring in food and water and medicine to care for these people. When the time comes, they try to evacuate them. Oftentimes they get attacked, and the Russians cover the bodies of these elderly with their own bodies, absorbing the bullets, absorbing the shrapnel, absorbing the drones, getting wounded, dying. And I went to a refugee camp where I talked to a room full of elderly people who should be retired, tending to their gardens. Instead, they've lost everything, and they're now sitting in a dormitory, being well cared for, but you lost everything. These people, some of them couldn't even talk about it. I tried to engage them. They just break down in tears. But when they talk about the Russian soldiers, and they're funny because they're like, the bureaucracy is slow. I need more of this. I need more of that. I mean, just like anybody would do. It's normal old people complaints. I complain like that. I'm an old person. But so they're complaining. But then as soon as you mention the Russian soldiers, they just well up in tears. They're like, these guys saved our lives. And they talk about how the Russian soldiers surrounded them with their bodies. And my God, the Russian soldiers are good. They're good people. They're good soldiers. They're good warriors, and they're winning. And that's what this entire Ukrainian propaganda exercise can't undo. You can have people spin Vladimir Putin's words any way you want. What you can't undo is the fact that yesterday Russia liberated a number of villages and towns, that Russia eliminated several brigades of Ukrainian manpower, that Russia advanced another several kilometers deep in, and Russia's closing in on the final urban defensive belt that exists in the Donbass. And they will take Slavyansk, they will take Kramatorsk, and then the Donbass will be captured, and they'll keep advancing because Ukrainians can't stop them. And now for the Ukrainian drone operators, the drone operators there, they're very good, but drone operators operate from a fixed location. That's one thing that came across me. I thought the drone operators would be mobile and maneuvering in there. No, the drone operators pick a fixed location. They get locked in there, and then they offset their antennas with wires and lines and all that stuff. But they're running their drones. They have to be careful though, because the enemy's looking for them. The Ukrainians are looking for the Russians. The Russians are looking for the Ukrainians. The Russians have a specialty unit called Rubicon, but specialize in this sort of thing. And so when the Ukrainians launch this big drone attack, understand there's a drone operator somewhere guiding it, and he's going to be in that position for 10 to 14 days before he rotates out. And one of those days, he's going to fuck up. All right. He's supposed to have a trash bin where he drinks his water. And then he's supposed to put the empty plastic bottle in the trash bin. The sky is his presence, but they get lazy. About day 8, he's drinking the water. He's focused on something, and he throws it at the trash bin. It hits the lid, rolls out underneath the tree cover. And a Russian drone operator goes, plastic bottle. Got to you, son of a bitch. And then they track it in. Immediately, 3 to 5 FAB 500 kilogram bombs on saying kill everybody. This happens over and over every single day. It's the most dangerous job in the world, Ukrainian drone operator. They're dying by the bushel because they're out there flooding the zone, but they're flooding the zone in a marketplace where the Russians are monitoring everything they do, and the Russians are singularly focused on killing them. Now, the Russians make mistakes too, and the Ukrainians kill them. It's a hard war being fought, but the Russians are winning this war decisively. I went to drone development centers and looked at what the Russians are doing in terms of developing the technology that Vladimir Putin spoke of to shoot down the Ukrainian drones. And they have the technology. Now they just have to take it to scale, and that's what the Russians are working on. We went to one place, the Archangels Drone Research Center. They've recently signed a deal with Kalishnikov out of Izhevsk to take their design and mass produce it and get it in the hands of the soldiers. And there's other innovation centers. Dmitry Rogozhin, the former head of Roscosmos, runs a combat unit called BARS, Sarmat. BARS is the Russian abbreviation for Reserve Forces. Sarmat is the name that he picked for it because he helped develop the Sarmat heavy ICBM, and he just brought that along with him, basically implying that I'm going to kick your ass, and he is. And there's other research centers too. The Russians are on top of this. And that's what people don't understand. You're out there reading the Wall Street Journal. You're out there reading the Kiev Post. You're out there reading the New York Times. You're out there reading just stupidity. Guys, don't believe me. Go yourself if you have the balls, okay? Because I'll tell you what, it takes a pair of balls to go there right now. When I realized how bad it was going to be, I may not have done it because there was a period of time where you're sitting there going, wow, if this goes bad, I mean, look, my driver was a veteran special forces guy, this sort of a Russian Delta Force type equivalent, cool character. But when he is sitting there, because of it, basically, if a drone's coming at you head on, you're dead. There's nothing you can do. You're going to die. And so don't even bother looking in front of you, because if you see the drone coming at you, just wave. Maybe they'll catch you on camera and your mom can see your face. Put a smile on it, because the Ukrainians love to record your face and put it out there. So rather than looking scared, just smile, give them the finger, do something, but you're going to die. That's just the way it's going to be. But if you scan to your left and your right, you can catch the drone coming in. You may have time to get out, to bail out of the car. The drone's coming after the vehicle, not necessarily the people. So if you could get out in time and separate when they hit it, you might only get a couple holes in your back and your ass and your legs. That's the reality. But that's if the drone comes in on the horizon. But if the drone comes in on the tree line, by the time you see it through the tree line, it's too late. It's right there on you, and you're about 2 seconds away from dying. We're driving in parts of Zaporozhye where it's relatively flat, but you have tree lines. And you know what looks like a drone coming at you? A frickin' crow flying straight out of the tree line. And there were a couple of times where we're driving, all of a sudden, here comes a crow, and this guy's like, cursed because he just thought he was dead. He was like, I'm dead, because that's what it looked like. We were all just chunked. We're like, shit, we died. Oh, no, we didn't. Thank God it was a bird, but it could have been a drone. We only had to go through one day of that, getting out of there. The people that live there go through this every single day. They don't quit. They tell jokes. They have great humor. Gasoline is tough. There's no doubt about that. The Ukrainians have been blowing up gas station. The convoy that we're in, the reason why it got hit was that there were 5, gasoline tankers there. Now, they had the thing that saved us is that they had the gun trucks, and the gun trucks were able to shoot down the drone. But, the Ukrainians were targeting that. But the thing about these drones that Eric Schmidt provided with them, these Hornet drones, is they have AI built into them. So they come in and they get guided in there, and then they get into a search routine. And so basically it's just freaking Russian roulette. You're driving down a highway of death, and you just, when the drone pattern, if you're under the drone pattern, when it's there, it got you, you're dead. Or you can bail out of your car and run. If it's out maneuvering past and you drive through there, you get to live. It's Russian roulette every single day. Now, the AI in the drone is telling it gives it certain things to look for. So it's, prioritize military vehicles, gas tankers, things of that nature. But drones, especially like a Hornet, they're battery driven. It's the battery life. And as the battery comes down to around 20%, the AI clicks into automatic kill mode, which means it's no longer searching for something that could be military. It says, kill the first thing you see, which more often than not is a civilian vehicle. And that's the reality. That's why you see cars hit and all that. So, these drones are they're literal terrorist tools. So Eric Schmidt is a terrorist. Google is a terrorist organization. And I wish the United States would prosecute them to the full extent of the law.
Yeah, and Scott, if you could now, you mentioned the battlefield situation, and I wanted to just pull up this. This is from the Institute for the Study of War, of course, Victoria Nuland's pet project, constantly, of course, spreading the same narratives you outlined there. But here we see some major progress going towards Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, you mentioned. And of course, the person who posted this said, Ukraine is winning, Russia's collapsing, Putin is panicking, and that Russia, the reality is 10 kilometers away from breaking the fortress belt. What does this mean, and how significant is this?
First of all, understand that this map is totally meaningless. The Russians have things called DRGs. The Ukrainians use them as well, deep reconnaissance groups. Basically, these are special forces, reconnaissance forces that are searching for the seam in the Ukrainian defenses. So they push forward, identify Ukrainian strong points, and then they'll bring drones in. What you're not seeing here right now is in Kramatorsk, that city, the Ukrainians or the Russians are operating fiber optic FPV drones. So the gray zone is already pushed into Kramatorsk. Right now, it makes it look like Ukraine's in control of Kramatorsk. Ukraine's in control of shit. They don't control anything. Kramatorsk is a dead zone. Slavyansk, the Russians have already advanced into it. You have DRGs that have closed within the city limits. And again, the drones they've cut off Slavyansk. It's unsustainable. This is the reality of it. This map doesn't show you the reality of this war. This war is a very fluid war. And the advances too, the day of, I couldn't fight and win this war. That's the thing. Maybe I could learn and adapt. But the war I learned to fight isn't what's happening here today. I can't take a Marine company online and advance, with 3 platoons abreast or 2 platoons moving in, the 3rd in reserve. If I put a platoon of Marines online, the drones would come in and kill us all. So you advance in terms of 3s and 6s. I mean, you're down to small units of men who are given very limited objectives at a time. Seize this particular knoll, seize this strong point. And you have a drone support plan that comes in with you, providing fire support, and the war becomes one strong point at a time. And you take it or you don't take it. I mean, if you screw up, the Ukrainian drones come in and you have a bad day. That's the nature of war. It's a very fluid thing. All these lines that you see, these aren't lines. They're meaningless. It's actually a blur of activity, but almost all of the activity is based upon Russian movement and the Ukrainians in static positions. The Ukrainian troops have lost the ability to maneuver. They've lost the ability to support other troops. When they counterattack, again, you keep hearing, the Ukrainians advanced, took back, X amount of territory. They're punching into the gray zone. So they're taking back no man's land. And they're not taking it back. They're just advancing into a kill zone, and they all die. Nobody ever talks about that. Today, the Ukrainians counterattack, and they recaptured Village X, Village Y, and they took this amount of square meter territory. And then tomorrow you say, well, what happened? Well, they're all dead. Why? Well, they advanced into a kill zone. They advanced into the gray zone, and the Russian drones came in, cut them off, and killed everybody. Russian troops are mopping them up and ripping the chevrons off the bodies as souvenirs. This map is meaningless, but the one thing that you get out of this map is the inexorable advance of the Russian forces. The Ukrainians can't stop them. They won't stop them. This war is over. When's it going to be over, Scott? You said it's going to be over in 3 weeks. Fuck you. I'm just going to straight up say that. When I said that, along with others, like the director of the CIA and chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, we thought Russia was going to war. Russia didn't go to war. Russia carried out a special military operation. It took us a while to figure out what the hell that was. And once we did, we realized that we're dealing with something totally different, and we have to readjust all the algorithms that we use for war. And I did. In fact, if you remember, Danny, back in April and May, when the United States promised $48 billion injection of funding to Ukraine, I said, it's a game changer. Scott, you're flip-flopping. I'm not flip-flopping. I'm identifying a new reality. $48 billion worth of military assistance changes the nature of this game. And now it's going to be extended, and Russia's going to have to respond, and Russia did, and that changed the game. And we've been looking at the back and forth game. But one thing that hasn't changed is that Russia has retained the strategic initiative throughout, and that Russia's winning, not just against Ukraine, but against the collective West. 1993, George Soros wrote an article where he said that it's inevitable that NATO will go to war with Russia. Inevitable. 1993. So all the people out there saying NATO wasn't looking for war. 1993, NATO was looking for war. But he said that it won't be a war that NATO fights directly with Russia because NATO's European societies can't handle the body bags coming home. That NATO will have to find a source of Eastern European manpower and provide them with technology, with weapons. Well, that's what's happening today. Ukraine is the source of Eastern European manpower. NATO is supplying it with technology and weapons and funding. And now we're into a gigantic war of attrition where Russia is, being compelled to basically terminate the DNA, the DNA reservoir of Ukraine. Ukraine will never be the same. Ukraine will never recover from this war. Ukraine has lost so many men, it will never recover from this war. Ukraine is a dead nation, not just a dying nation, they're dead. It's, we've passed the point where Ukraine can be revived. It's a dead nation, it's a fake nation, it's a false nation, propped up by Western support, Western money, Western funding, etc. But Russia's not just fighting Ukraine, Russia's fighting the collective West, the United States, Europe, the economic potential of all. People tend to forget that Europe has a much larger population than Russia, and Europe has a much larger gross domestic product that Russia is, fighting, from an inferior position and winning. People never focus on that. Russia is outproducing the defense industrial potential of the collective West, inclusive of the United States. And their forces are burning through Western stockpiles. People keep saying, Russians ran out of tanks. Well, I don't think the Russians are the one that ran out of tanks. When was the last time Germany deployed delivered a Leopard 4 to Ukraine? A long time ago, because Russia killed them all. The Russians are still producing a lot of T-80s, T-90s. They may even resume production of the T-14 once they get the drone issue, and once they develop technologies that make maneuver viable in the current drone reality. But the fact of the matter is that Russia has done a hell of a job here. Vladimir Putin, everybody's critical of him. I was at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum. I actually got a great seat. I was in the second row of the plenary session, so got to see the bead of sweat on Vladimir Putin's forehead. I'm joking, he didn't sweat. But the point is, the speech that he delivered didn't make any mention of the war whatsoever. None. And this is right after Star of Bells, 21 murdered students. This is after a Ukrainian drone attack on the opening day of St. Petersburg Forum. And you thought that it would, that this would dominate. Everybody thought, I thought he'd come up there and just be breathing fire and brimstone. It was time to, shoot the dog. But it didn't. He said, no, my focus is the economy. My focus is Russia. My focus is the growth and the development of that welfare of all Russians. He did talk about the war, and he basically said that it will be continued until we win on our terms. But he's not letting the war define this. And people tend to forget, because there's people out there right now. I mean, you know him, Dr. Rowe, my favorite septuagenarian, who's basically saying that, Vladimir Putin is under pressure, that the military is ready to revolt, and that. Vladimir Putin under pressure? I mean, his approval rating went from 81 to 78? Western politicians would kill for 78% approval rating. Kill. This man is under no political threat whatsoever inside Russia. Are there people upset? Sure. There's always going to be people upset. Doesn't mean that they're going to be screaming for a Maidan moment in Moscow anytime soon. There are people who say that Vladimir Putin should strike more decisively, but they forget that he's winning the war. I mean, this is the one thing people tend to forget. Everybody who says, let's bomb Europe tomorrow, including me, has to stop and take pause and ask the question, then what? Because if you bomb Europe tomorrow, you run the chance of expanding a conflict that you're winning. Why do you want to change the algorithm of attrition that you're winning? Because some bloggers are pissed off that, Ukraine gets the published propaganda that resonates in the West. It's an echo chamber. All Gilbert Dr. O'Doon is echoing Western propaganda and echoing it back and breathing life into it. But the reality is, Vladimir Putin, as you saw, is it having an effect? Yes, but Russia will adapt. Russia will adjust. And Russia will not stop doing what it's doing, which is winning this war. And at some point in time, that urban belt that you showed, Slavyansk and Kramatorsk, is going to fall. And when it falls, that's the end of the Donbass. Russia occupies it. When the Donbass breaks, the Ukrainian army breaks, and we begin a cascading effect of collapse. And that's it. When's it going to happen, Scott? I don't know. The other fiction out there is that the Russians have put timelines out there. Vladimir Putin has missed 15 self-imposed deadlines and timelines. There's been no timelines. I challenge anybody to find me one statement from the Russian government that says the Russian army needs to do this by this date. Hasn't happened. The Russians aren't looking at the calendar. The Russians are looking at, objectives. Accomplish this objective, that objective. And that's what's driving this war. And it drives people in the West crazy because the people in the West want things to happen on a calendar. And if it doesn't happen on a calendar, then they determine, victory or defeat. Ladies and gentlemen, Russia doesn't operate on the Western calendar. Russia doesn't give a damn about the Western calendar. If you go to Melitopol, you'll understand the only calendar they care about is the calendar of their own personal reality. That personal reality is to get up in the morning and do what you need to do to survive. And hopefully you make it through the day. Then you go to bed at night, you wake up the next morning, you do the same thing. And you keep doing that day after day after day until the war is over. And the war, if the war doesn't end the way you want it, then the war continues. That's the other thing people don't understand. They just aren't going to quit. Anybody who thinks that Russia is going to quit, you haven't been to Russia and you don't know the Russians. Gilbert Doctor has been to Russia, but he's talking to the wrong people. I think, hey, Gil, let's talk about it. You're in Brussels, right? Sort of like NATO territory. How much contact do you have with the MI6? I mean, are you echoing their talking points? Because it sure seems like you are. It sure seems like you're playing into the game book that's being written by MI6, Moscow House in London Station. And I think that's exactly what Gilbert Doctor is doing, whether he knows it or not. It's a 100% guarantee that Gilbert Doctor is being used by Western intelligence to feed this absurd propaganda that Russia's losing, that Putin's under pressure, and that the military is about to quit. Gil, go visit the Donbass and come back and tell me Russia's about to quit. There ain't no quit in Russia.
And Scott, so to your point about Russian approval of Vladimir Putin, the Levada Center, it's a very interesting graph about given the dates when you look at from the beginning of his tenure as Russian president in 2000, and then of course subsequent elections. But you see quite a lot of variation here. But one thing that is quite certain is that approval rating has dramatically increased since the Ukraine conflict began. And yes, it has gone down a bit, but that's relative to these massive numbers. I mean, 88% 2025, 80% all through, and then now 79%. So not
79, it's a collapse.
I know, yeah. It's like not the collapse. That graph does not signal collapse. That graph looks very I
remember
good when, for Putin. Yeah.
I was in Moscow and walking around, and everybody in the Telegram chat and everything were, Moscow's, talking about burning fires and just I was on Arbat Street. It's just like, panic. There ain't no panic. The street was full of people just living their lives. No panic, no running, just people living their life. And this is the reality of it. Like anything, people get tired of it. To pretend that the war is not having an impact on the Russian economy is absurd. Of course it's having an impact on the Russian economy. And to pretend that after 4+ years of war that people aren't tired of it, of course they're tired of it. And if I go to a cafe and talk to people, they're going to tell me they're tired of this war. Do they want the war to end? Who doesn't want the war to end? That's just the reality of it. And so on any given day, you can have people go, Vladimir Putin's not doing a good job. Uptick on the Vladimir Putin disapproval rating. I don't know. I watched Ksenia Sobchak the other night, and I've decided I'm against Vladimir Putin. Oh, damn, it goes down to 79%. But Ksenia Sobchak, I did a 3-hour interview with her that she still hasn't aired. Ksenia, what's going on? Call me if you have a problem. We can sort it out. I think she tried to ambush me and it didn't work. But she's somebody who's embraced the anti-Putin narrative. She's not in support of this war, and she tried to create the impression that many people in Russia weren't in support of this war. That mothers throughout Russia were hesitant to send their sons off to fight and die. Well, what mother isn't hesitant to send their son off to fight and die? But I think most Russian mothers identify with the Motherland Calls, the statue at the Kurgan Mamayev, where the Mother Russia is telling the sons to go forward and fight the fascists. The Russians understand what's going on here. They know what the stakes are. And the Russians will defend Russia, and the Donbass is Russia, and Zaporozhye is Russia, and Kherson is Russia. It's populated by Russians, and Russians will defend Russia. There's a handful of people who, still believe in the time when the West provided the shining city on a hill for the Russians to aspire to be like. People like Gilbert Doctorow, who brought in their Western technology and their Western business practices, and they made the Russians kneel in subservience to the wisdom of these all-knowing Westerners. Those days are over. The West is no longer holds any sway over the Russian people, and people like Ksenia Sobchak are out of time. But again, Russia doesn't have any free speech. Well, Ksenia Sobchak certainly can get up there and say the crap that she says, and says it regularly. She worked for RAIN TV, which is an opposition-funded organization. There's plenty of dissenting voices in Russia today. That's one of the reasons why people like Gilbert Doctorow, resonate here in the West, because they can echo off of certain chambers. But again, we just get down to the fact at the height of the Ukrainian drone offensive, Vladimir Putin's approval ratings is 79%. What was George H.W. Bush's approval rating after he won Desert Storm? Was it close to 79%? My point is, people literally don't know what the hell they're talking about. They really don't know what the hell they're, and you won't know unless you go to Russia. Go. It's not illegal. Get a damn passport, go to the consulate office, pay $180, they'll give you a visa, and go. Police ain't going to grab you at the airport. Taxi driver will try to drive you into Moscow. Bring cash. Can't use credit cards yet, but it's affordable. The people are nice. And oh gosh, you can't leave Moscow or St. Peter. Yeah, you can. Travel. You don't try to go to the special military operation without permission. They will stop you at the border. But it's a war zone after all. But you can go to Volgograd, you can go to Kazan, go to Chechnya. Hell, go to Grozny. They have a great restaurant there. Go to the third floor. They have great chicken soup. It's good stuff. Russia is a great country, and people need to see it to believe it. But stop listening to the naysayers. Stop listening to the propagandists. Vladimir Putin said it right. It's difficult right now. But it doesn't mean, difficult doesn't mean it's over. Difficult doesn't mean you're losing. Difficult just means it's not easy anymore. And difficult means you gotta change what you're doing. You gotta adapt. Russia is populated by the people who are more capable of adaptation than anybody else in the world.
And then my final question to you, Scott, is regarding the NATO summit. It's coming up next week, and Russia has not been striking Kiev as hard as it has, let's say, in recent weeks and months. There are reports actually that there might be a pretty significant strike very soon, but even as soon as today. But do you think Russia will try to send a message? Because, Putin has made clear that he is very well aware of the European and NATO support for Ukraine's drone attacks on Russian civilians. Do you think Russia will make a statement during the summit that, it can hit very hard and maybe coordinate its more heavier strikes on Ukraine with this summit?
I can't speak for the Russian government. I definitely won't speak for Vladimir Putin. Russia's not in the business of making statements. They're in the business of winning a war. An Oreshnik missile costs, millions of dollars. So to make a statement by throwing away Oreshnik missiles means that you've thrown away production that is supposed to be used to achieve a specific military task. And the Russians are very, pragmatic when it comes to that. You don't expend a missile for a statement. You expend a missile to kill people, to blow up things. So when Russia strikes, it's because the intelligence information suggests that there's a target worthy of the strike. The other thing is that Vladimir Putin has been assiduous in avoiding meaningless escalation. He's winning. What the West wants, what Ukraine wants, is escalation. They're trying to provoke him. He's avoiding the provocations because he's winning. Why change the system that you're prevailing in? Why create the opportunity for the system to change into one that you may not be prevailing in? Why, throw away victory? It's a very politically sensitive time right now. And I'm sure many in the West would like Russia to send a signal. I mean, how convenient would it be for NATO to be meeting in Kiev to go, those dirty Russians, see what they've done? Because what are they going to say? They're not going to say it's inevitable that Russia wins. They're going to say, look at the Russians once again striking defenseless Kiev. We need to give more air defense to Ukraine. So how effective was the Russian statement at that point in time? So I don't see the Russians, doing a statement. If in the middle of this, the Russians decide that the target has made itself available, they may strike. But then again, they may not, because again, you have to play out the political disadvantages of striking during this political sensitive time. Why would Russia want to strike NATO right now? I mean, let's just think about it for a second. Let's walk through this one. Because NATO is certainly saying, we're all coming together. We got a G7 meeting where everybody agreed we're going to build weapons and provide munitions to the Ukrainians. Hey, we're awesome. You're not that awesome, guys. Let's put it into perspective of NATO for a second. 9/11, the United States compelled NATO to invoke Article 5. The United States compelled NATO to do it. We didn't need to do it, but we compelled them to do it. And then from that compelling, we got NATO engaged in a 20-year conflict in Afghanistan. 20-year conflict, which we then withdrew from unilaterally. When you generally are dealing with a NATO environment, people go out to Article 5, collective self-defense, but the more important article is Article 4, which requires consensus and collaboration, consultation. We withdrew from Afghanistan without any consultation. We abandoned our NATO allies, and they were forced to leave on their own. That left a bitter taste in their mouth, where the United States invokes Article 5 but refuses to engage in Article 4, which means that NATO is nothing more than an extension of the United States. I think that's the reality, but nobody likes to have that thrown in their face. And now we have a situation where the United States entered a unilateral war against Iran outside the framework of international law, no justification whatsoever. And now they want to invoke Article 5 type response from NATO. The United States hasn't been attacked. The United States did the attacking. But we demand that NATO rally to our cause as if it was Article 5. But we're doing this without any consultation. NATO was never told that the United States is going to attack. And so NATO isn't doing it. So there's a lot of resentment in the United States right now, and a lot of resentment in Europe. You really want Russia to do something that brings these two sides together? This resentment's real. Turkey's the host. Last time I checked, just a few years ago, Turkey was sending a shipment of weapons to Libya when a French frigate attempted to intercept the Turkish convoy, and the Turks threatened to sink the French ship. That's NATO on NATO violence. Last time I checked, Turkey was involved in supporting Azerbaijan against Armenia. Armenia backed by EU. Armenia that wants to join NATO. That's a little problematic too. Turkey went into Syria, was attacked by Russia, went to NATO and said, we need help. NATO said, we're not going to help you on this one. You're on your own. Turkey, has done a number of things to protect itself and ended up getting sanctioned by the United States. Right now, Turkey's talking about building a F-35, type fighter. All they want is old F-16 engines, but we won't give it to them. The Turks feel like second-class citizens. In July 15th, 2016, there was a coup against Erdogan, run by, backed by the United States and NATO. A coup backed by the United States and NATO, trying to get rid of Erdogan, but now Erdogan's, hosting NATO. Anybody who thinks that NATO is going to come rolling into Ankara, this is going to be just one big kumbaya party, has no idea what's going on. Vladimir Putin's best bet at this point in time is to sit back, pop up some popcorn, and enjoy the show, because it's going to be a shit show. I mean, NATO's just going to fall in on itself. Trump's going to say, where's your 5%? Why haven't you come to help? NATO's going to say, why aren't you helping us with Ukraine? Zelensky's going to be there, and he's going to do something just stupid and piss Trump off, and then Trump will reverse course on the G7 commitment, and the Russians are going to sit there and go, I mean, because that's it, baby. It's entertainment. So for all the people saying Russia's got to act now, send a statement. Why? Why would Russia do that? Now, I'm not saying they won't, but if they do, they're going to have a reason. But the best statement is to sit there and say NATO is dysfunctional, and watch NATO prove that assessment.
Yeah, well, oftentimes on social media it's shared regarding China, but the statement of do nothing and win, I think that can be applied here to Russia and NATO. NATO is not looking well, and has not been looking well for many years. Scott, I want to make sure everyone knows that your website is in the video description, scottritter.com, where they can follow you and support your work. I also want to mention quickly the case of Dan Kovalik, mutual friend of ours. He was detained by UK authorities under the Terrorism Act in the UK. His things were taken. He's been on the show before. We have done a lot of work together, both Scott and I, with him. All of his devices were taken away. I believe he is out now, but nonetheless, they have seriously violated his both constitutional and human rights. So I just want to put that out there. I'll give it to you, Scott, for the final words, as I think I'll put up the new members and super chats on the way. But final word for you, Scott.
Well, let's just deal with Dan real quick. If you go to scottritter.com, you'll get to my Substack page, and on there you'll see a section called Ritter's Rant. It's actually my YouTube channel, and I did a rant yesterday about Dan. And the point is that, Great Britain likes to talk about a special relationship with the United States, but a special relationship is predicated upon, common values. And today, Great Britain, the United Kingdom has no common value with the United States. Dan Kovalik this is a lawyer, an international lawyer, a man who defends human rights. He's the good guy. He's on the right side of history. And he was detained because of what he spoke about. He spoke out against the genocide in Gaza. He spoke out against the illegal war of aggression in Iran, and the British pulled him aside. Now, you can disagree with Dan Kovalik, but you can't suppress his speech if you call yourself pro-American. Now, England is a sovereign state, United Kingdom is a sovereign state, and they can do what they want, but there should be consequences. The United States has values. We stand for something, and one of the things we stand for is free speech. And I would just hope that all American citizens will rally around the cause of Dan Kovalik and let the British government know that they screwed up, that this will not be tolerated, that you've identified yourself as an enemy of the United States, an enemy of free speech, and you should be treated as such. So that's that. Dan, if you're watching, stay strong, buddy. We got you back as much as we can at this juncture, but you haven't been forgotten. And then I just want to point out again that I just came back from a 3-week trip to Russia. It's a mind-blowing trip. I've written some about it. I'm getting ready to write more about it. We have 2 documentary films that are going to be produced based upon this. It couldn't have happened without your support. I'm an independent journalist who operates on a budget that's defined by your donations. And so far, your donations have been fantastic. They also got me to Turkey for a 3-day summit in preparation to the big NATO summit. I just wrote an article about that today on my Substack. Substack's free. If you subscribe, you pay my salary. But if you donate, you actually fund the next trip. And today was an amazing day because a trip I thought I was making in September to do one thing has turned out to be something else, something mind-blowing. And, but again, it can't happen without your support. So the coffers are down to zero. Thank you. I spent your money wisely, and you will see the product of your investment. But if you can help me rebuild it so that I'll be able to take the September trip, you won't be sorry. I went to the special military operation, spent 10 days there because of you, because of your support, but also because of you, because the goal is to gather information and be able to bring it back to you. And in September, I'll have the opportunity to pursue the next phase of potential conflict between Russia and Europe. Whether or not there will be a flare-up in the Baltics or a flare-up in the Arctic. And if you guys think that's cool, go to the Substack page and donate if you can. But again, I want to thank everybody for all the support they've provided. None of this would happen. And I want to thank you, Danny, for bringing me on. And I just want to encourage your audience to support you as well. Dan Kovalik is a friend of ours. It has just been proven they're trying to silence us. They're trying to shut us down. They're trying to prevent all this from happening. They want you to be able to do nothing more than tune into the Wall Street Journal, the New York Times, and all the other crap that's out there that echoes the lies of the Trump administration, echoes the lies of the war party. If you believe in peace, if you believe in the potential of peace, if you believe that truth is power, then you have to support people like Danny Haifong and Dan Kovalik and others. So thanks.